Hey guys, RJ here with RJ's Android Tutorials. Today we're going to start a brand new series where we explore the app Snapchat and we try and replicate a lot of the features. And in doing so, we're going to learn a lot about how to build Android apps. So I'm hoping that this tutorial is going to be accessible to someone who's never done anything on Android, but also have some interesting stuff for people who have done a fair bit of Android. We should get to do a lot of exciting things like build basic views, load lists of data, but also more complex things like displaying videos on a surface view and taking pictures with the camera. So hopefully there'll be something for everyone who's interested in Android development in this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to concentrate on is building the main navigation of the Snapchat app. The navigation for the three main screens, the camera screen, the chat screen, and the story screen, is all based on an Android component called a view pager. If you've used Facebook's app or Tumblr's app, they both rely on a view pager as their main form of navigation as well. It feels a little different in Snapchat just because it's styled full screen and has this nice fading, changing background as you swipe through it. But at its core, it's the same element. It's just a nice view pager. So let's get started in building it. If you don't have Android Studio, your first step will be to go to developer.android.com and download Android Studio. Once you have Android Studio downloaded, you can go ahead and just go File, New Project. Call your project whatever you like. I'm calling mine Snap Demo. And then on the next page, it will allow you to create a choose the minimum version of Android, or if you already have a project going, you can check your minimum version if you go to your build.gradle. The minimum version of Android that we're targeting for this project is 21. That's Android 5.0. It's just going to make our life a lot easier if we choose this as the minimum version. And most modern phones support this version of Android. The only other things that I've added so far to this project is a small utility class called print. I'll post a link to a gist with this class, but it is just a simple class that allows me to log without joining my strings manually. It just has one little utility that just joins all the strings that you pass to it or objects that you pass to it, makes them strings, so logging is a little easier. The other thing that I did do is add a few extra colors that we're going to be using throughout the project. But other than that, this is just a brand new Android Studio project. So the first thing we will want to look at is the layout of the main activity. If you've never done anything in Android, most screens that you see in apps at their base level are controlled by an activity. So what we're going to have is one big activity which has a view pager, this swipey view inside of it, and that swipey view will hold each of these independent views. So on this page, it will actually be a fragment, the chat fragment, and then for this middle page, we'll have our camera information, and this other page will have the story information in a separate fragment. So in order to do that, we're going to go to our main activity. I just have a relative layout as the base, nothing else. First thing we're going to do is add a view, and that view is going to be our background view. If you look at the sample app that I've created, or if you're on the Snapchat app, you'll notice this background which sort of fades in and out and changes color as we swipe through our view pager. If we go to the main background of our root layout, we can set the background of that to be black. And then, like I said, I made these color resources already. If you want to pause the screen, you can copy them all down, or you can make up your own colors. It doesn't really matter. And then we're going to make this one. We're going to make this one blue just to start out with, so that we can see it. Color blue. We're going to give our view an ID so that we can reference it later. We'll call it activity main underscore. We'll call it background view. Okay, so now we have a view, and I told you that we were going to be using a view pager. So we're going to import the support view pager, and it's going to do match parent and match parent, at least for now. We're actually going to make some, we might make some modifications out in the future, but for now this is a good starting point. Android ID, we'll give this an ID as well. Activity main view pager. Okay, so now we have this view. If we want, we can look at our design tab and see we have this page. You'll notice that there's this toolbar being rendered here, and it's based on the theme app theme. One thing you'll notice about the Snapchat app is it's actually a full screen. It goes underneath this bottom navigation view as well as the top status bar, and it has its own customized toolbar that it renders. So we're actually, if we go into main activity and we just ran it as is, it's going to render a toolbar for us, and we don't want that. And the way to get around that is to go into our style. So if we look at our app theme, the parent of the app theme is the dark action bar. We're actually going to change it to no action bar. It's almost done creating and building. Once it builds, I'll show you guys. And then eventually what we're going to do is we're going to add a new style, and we're going to call it full screen theme, and the parent will be our app theme. So it's going to inherit from our app theme, but we're going to make some slight changes to it to make it a full screen theme. So as you can see here, Snap Demo, it shows this toolbar as well as the status bar, and we don't have our view going underneath the navigation bar. So we need to change all those things. So in order to do that, we already got rid of the toolbar by saying no action bar here. We're going to add a couple more items. The first will be Android translucent. Oh, there it was. Window. Helps if you can spell. Window translucent navigation is going to be true, and also Android window translucent status is also going to be true. So now if we run our app, well, if we ran our app right now, nothing would happen because we defined this theme, but we never actually applied it to our activity. If you don't have an activity yet, you're just going to need to go and do new Java class. Sorry, not new Java class. You'll go into this folder here and do new Java class. You'll call it main activity, and you'll have the superclass for it be app compat activity. I already have it, so I'm not going to create a new one. Same thing, if you don't already have a layout file, you can just do new layout resource file, call yours activity underscore main, make the root layout relative layout, and then you can get to the point where we are. If we go into our manifest, this sort of controls the top level skeleton of our application. You'll see main activity. This style app theme is being applied to everything, but we actually need to do make a modification for our activity. And for this activity, we're going to add a new theme. So if we do Android theme, style, full screen. So now this activity that we have is going to have the correct theme. And if we run this activity, we should be able to see that it goes underneath the navigation bar and the status bar, if we didn't do anything wrong, which is a big if in Android development. There's always something that you tend to forget, but I think this should work. Just launching the activity. It can be a little slow. And look at that. So we got it underneath our top status bar and underneath our navigation bar. So we are at a good starting place. Okay, so we added this background view and also a view pager. So in order to add the swiping behavior that we want, we're going to have to build that, reference that view pager, and fill it with views. So if you've done any Android work, you know already how we reference views. We do view, we're going to call this one background. Background is going to be find view by ID, r.id, and whatever ID you gave to your views. We also have our view pager, which is, we'll just call it view pager, find view by ID, r.id, .am, view pager. Since this is a view pager and we know that, find view by ID returns a view type, we can cast it to the view pager type so that we have the proper type associated with this view. And find view by ID is just a method on app compat activity, so it's available to us and we can go ahead and call it anytime we need it. So the way a view pager works is you have to set an adapter. So we do view pager set adapter. It takes an instance of a pager adapter. If we go ahead, that pager adapter just needs two things. It needs the count, and it has this method isViewFromObject that we also have to override. Now that's if we just want to do a basic adapter. What we're actually going to do is we're going to create our own custom adapter. And so if we're going to go new package or call it adapter, because we're going to put any other adapters that we create for our project in this file, and we're going to create one called main pager adapter. Okay, and we're going to extend from fragment pager adapter. This is going to allow us to use fragment views in as the pages of our view pager. If you want to know what I'm doing, I'm pressing, I'll have to redo it to remember. Option and enter, and then it gives me these suggestions, or you can click on this little light bulb here and create custom constructor matching super. That just means anytime we create a fragment view pager, we have to take an instance of the fragment manager, and so we have to override that constructor. Okay, so these two methods are pretty simple. The first one just says give me a fragment when I call getItem4Position. The second method says give me the number of fragments that you're going to create for me. So we already know the number is going to be 3 because we have 3 pages that we want to render. If we go back to our example app, you'll see there's one page, the first page, the middle page, and the last page, the stories page. So let's create a series of fragments that can go into this view pager. So if we go fragments, and then we create a new Java class, we'll call this one the chat fragment. We're going to extend from fragment, and we're going to do the same thing. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create a class called base fragment. And what base fragment is going to allow us to do is define some methods in base fragment that we want all our fragments to have. that way, if there's anything that we do in every single fragment that we get sort of tired of doing over and over and over again, we can put it into the base fragment class. That will then allow us to make quick changes that will affect all of our fragments. Now, one thing that I like to do in a base fragment is make it an abstract class, and then have a method called that returns a layout res ID, and call it get layout res ID, because you have to inflate the layout of every fragment you want to create. So get layout res ID, because inflating the layout, is something that we need to do in every fragment. And we're going to do a private view, call it root. And that root view is going to be root equals inflator, inflate get layout res ID, get layout, resource get layout res ID. I don't know why it's not letting me reference my method here. And because I call it GR layout res ID. So if we do get layout res ID, and then the root is the container, and we not countdown timer, the container, and false for attached to root. That way, every time we create a fragment, it will inflate whatever layout we give it. And then we're going to have another method. We're going to call it in on create view. So public abstract void in on create view. And we're going to pass this the root layout as well as the parent. Container and the bundle as well, just so we have everything that we might possibly need. Move this up just for a second so I can add this and go back down. So now we can call in on create view here, and the root will be root, and then container, and saved instance, and then we're going to return root. So now we've done a bunch of sort of boilerplate here, but it's going to make it a little bit easier for us to spin up a new fragment, because it's going to automatically ask us the question that we need. And the question we need is, what is the layout res ID of this fragment? And so if we go into our chat fragment, we can, instead of sending fragment, we're going to send base fragment. And then it's going to tell us the methods we need to override. And the first method is, what is the layout res ID of your fragment? So we're going to have to go ahead and create one. So let's create a new layout res ID. We'll call it fragment underscore chat, linear layout. And for now, this is going to be perfectly fine as our layout. And we're going to create two new layouts. So fragment underscore, we're going to call it story. And we're going to have one more fragment. We're going to call that one fragment empty. Now the reason why this one is called fragment empty, and actually instead of this we're going to do a frame layout for our empty fragment, And the reason why we're calling this fragment empty is because if you actually look at this page, the camera goes behind everything. And on this fragment, really none of the views actually live there. It's just a transparent view that sits over top of the camera. And so really we can have a totally empty fragment in the place here. So if we create a new fragment, we're going to do new empty fragment, extends fragment. And actually, instead of setting base fragment, which automatically inflates our root view for us, we're just going to extend empty fragment because this fragment's really going to do nothing. So we don't even need to inflate the layout. It's just gonna sort of exist, almost as a waste. But it's got to be there for it to work in our fragment adapter. And then we can create our third fragment. That fragment will be our story fragment. The superclass will be base fragment. So we're going to implement the methods required. The layout for story fragment will be r.layout.fragment story. And actually, I had you do all that stuff, but we don't even need this layout for our empty fragment because it's going to be empty. There's going to be nothing. So later we'll do some stuff in this onCreate view. We never set the layout for our chat fragment, so let's do that as well. r.layout.chat. Okay. Now, one other thing that I like to do in my fragment classes is to create a static method which creates an instance of the fragment. And the reason to do this is if you're passing any specific parameters to this fragment, you can add them to your create method. And that way you never forget what things that fragment requires. So if we do public static chat fragment, not check sequence, chat fragment, create, and we do a method that says return new chat fragment. Now you might be thinking, why bother if it just returns a new chat fragment? Well, this way we know we always have to call this onCreate method instead of the fragment constructor, because we don't want to override the fragment constructor because it does some specific things already, and we don't want to add any parameters to it. But we can then eventually, if we needed to pass some like string name or something like that to this, we could pass this here and then add them to our fragment arguments, and it would give us, that way we have the same starting point for all of our fragments. So we're going to do the same thing on our empty fragment. We're going to do public empty fragment, create, return new empty fragment, and the same thing on our story fragment. So okay, so now we have a way to create each of these fragments. So if we go to our adapter, our main pager adapter, instead of having a return statement here, we're going to do a switch and on the position, case 0, return the first position is, if we go to our pages, we have the chat fragment. So we do chat dot create. All right, and then case 1, we're going to return empty fragment, create. Looks like non-static method, public, we forgot to mark this one as static. So let's do that, and it's going to tell us the same thing because I copy pasted it for our story fragment. So we're going to have to add that modifier. A static method means you can reference it just from the class name, because it's always going to be the same. You don't need an instance of the class to create it. You don't have to say like new chat fragment and then call the method. You can just call it right away. So if we do case 2, return, and this one will be the story fragment. Create. Okay, so not much is going on in our fragments, but we should be able to page through them. And actually, one thing we're going to do right now is we're going to go to our chat fragment, and we're going to set the background color to be blue, light blue, and for our other fragment, we're going to change the color as well. That way we just know if it worked or not. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty hard to tell. So light blue, this one's going to be light purple. And so now if we go back to our main activity, the page adapter that we need to set is going to be, we're going to hold an instance of it. So let's call it this a main page adapter, adapter equals new main page adapter. It takes on a fragment manager, but if we do get support fragment manager, we will get that. That's another method that lives on AppCompat activity that we can just use anytime we need it. So now if we set the adapter, view page adapter, we should be good to go. One other thing, we're going to change this from light blue to black, because that way we'll be able to see each page. And this is showing an error. I just want to check. Oh, yep, and I know why we're showing an error, because we just need to return null otherwise. We shouldn't ever get to this position, but we have to return a fragment no matter what happens. So that's that. Okay, so let's go ahead and run what we have and see if we are forgetting anything. I know that was sort of a lot, but let's go back and just review it real quick. We created a main pager adapter, and that will say if it's the first position, give me a chat fragment. If it's the second position, give me an empty fragment. If it's the third position, give me a story fragment. We then created an instance of a new fragment for each one of these. So we have our chat fragment here, we have our empty fragment here, and we have our story fragment here. And they don't have much, but if we look at our fragment chat, you can sort of see the basic layout we have of each one. So if we page through, we can see, okay, so this first page is all blue, this middle page is all black, and this third page is all purple. That means we are doing good. We have the basics of our layout set up already. As views this video's gotten a little long already, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop right here, and then we will pick it up in the next video. But as you can see here, it's pretty simple to create a nice view pager, and as you can imagine, since these are just fragments, we can replace these with anything we want, and we can have a nice easy way to swipe through the fragments. In the next video, we'll go ahead and add in more of the Snapchat style layout and get a little closer to something that looks like what we want. So thank you guys so much, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video.